Husband threatened me with divorce when I questioned our empty savings account. You're paranoid and controlling, he shouted while packing a bag. Later that week, his mistress sent me their photos on vacation with our retirement funds. When he returned home, "What the hell is this, Jessica? Are you spying on me now?" Richard slammed his phone down on our kitchen counter so hard I thought the screen might crack. His face was flushed with anger I'd rarely seen in our 27 years of marriage. "I was just wondering where the money went," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Our savings account is practically empty. 30 years of retirement funds just gone. You checked our accounts without asking me? You're paranoid and controlling." He ran his hands through his salt and pepper hair in exasperation. "This is exactly the problem with our marriage. You don't trust me to handle anything. Richard, $487,000 doesn't just disappear. I have a right to know." "A right?" He laughed harshly. "You haven't worked in 20 years. That money is from my career, my sacrifices." The words stung like a physical slap. I had given up my career as a paralegal to raise our 3 children while he climbed the corporate ladder at Midwest Financial. We had agreed together that one of us would be home for the kids. It had been our decision, our shared sacrifice for our family. "If you can't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be married anymore," he continued, his voice suddenly cold and deliberate. "Maybe a divorce is what we need." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Are you serious? After 27 years, you'd throw everything away rather than just tell me where our retirement savings went?" Instead of answering, Richard stormed upstairs. I heard drawers opening and closing, closet doors slamming. When he returned, he had a suitcase in hand. "I need some time away from your accusations. I'll be back when you've calmed down and are ready to apologize." "Apologize? For asking about our financial future?" He was already heading for the door. "I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Don't try to contact me. I need space." The door slammed behind him, leaving me standing in our suddenly too quiet house in suburban Chicago. My hands were shaking as I sank into a kitchen chair. My name is Jessica Weber, 52 years old, and the life I thought I had, stable, secure, predictable, had just imploded in the span of 20 minutes. 3 kids, all now in college or beyond. Olivia in medical school, Thomas finishing his master's degree, and Zoe in her 2nd year of undergraduate studies. A husband of nearly 3 decades who had just threatened divorce rather than explain a vanished bank account. With trembling fingers I unlocked my laptop and logged into our online banking hoping I'd somehow misread the numbers. But the balance remained the same. $3,218.74. In our retirement account that should have held over $490,000. As I scrolled through recent transactions, I noticed something I'd missed before. A wire transfer from 2 weeks ago when I'd been visiting Olivia at medical school, and it had been sent to an account I didn't recognize under a name that made my stomach twist. Diana Blackwell. Richard and I met in college. He was the ambitious business major. I was studying criminal justice with plans for law school. We married young just after graduation, both of us eager to build a life together. When Olivia came along 3 years later, we made the decision that I would put my career on hold temporarily. Temporary became permanent as Thomas and Zoe followed, each 2 years apart. I never resented the choice. I loved being present for my children, watching them grow, helping shape who they would become. Richard thrived at work, moving up steadily from analyst to senior management. We were a team. He provided financially, I managed our home and family. At least that's what I'd always believed. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? We weathered the normal storms, financial pressures when the kids needed braces all at once, Richard's stress during company restructuring, my mother's long illness before she passed. Through it all, we'd stood together, or so I thought. Things began to change about a year ago. Richard started working later, traveling more frequently. He became protective of his phone, angling the screen away when I entered the room. When I mentioned these changes, he dismissed my concerns as paranoia, blamed work pressure, accused me of not understanding the demands of his position. I wanted to believe him. After all, what did I know about corporate finance? My world had been schedules and homework, doctor appointments, and grocery shopping. So I pushed my doubts aside, telling myself that marriage required trust. Still, small inconsistencies accumulated. Dinner reservations appeared on our credit card statement on nights he claimed to be working late. Hotel charges in our hometown when he supposedly had overnight meetings in Minneapolis. A cologne I didn't recognize lingering on his shirts. 2 months ago, I found a receipt for a woman's bracelet from Tiffany in his suit pocket while doing laundry. When confronted, Richard claimed it was a retirement gift for his assistant Patricia. I called his office the next day under the pretense of confirming lunch plans, only to learn from the receptionist that Patricia had left the company over a year ago. Even then, I hesitated to act on my suspicions. We had built a life together, a beautiful home in Lake Forest, 3 wonderful children, a wide circle of friends. Walking away from 27 years of marriage wasn't something I took lightly. And honestly, I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over in my 50s. Afraid of what divorce would do to our children even as adults. So I watched, and I waited, and I hoped I was wrong. I kept my concerns to myself, maintained appearances, smiled at dinner parties and family gatherings. And all the while, apparently, our retirement savings were silently disappearing, draining away like sand through an hourglass I didn't know had been turned over. The day after Richard left, I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by bank statements, credit card bills, and investment reports. The more I dug, the worse it looked. Small withdrawals had begun nearly 8 months ago, amounts that wouldn't immediately raise alarms, but which added up over time. Then larger transfers started 3 months ago, culminating in the massive wire transfer to Diana Blackwell. I googled the name, but nothing significant appeared. I checked Richard's friends on social media, but found no connection. Who was this woman, and why had my husband given her our life savings? My phone chimed with a notification. It was from Instagram. Someone had tagged me in a post. Strange, since I rarely used social media. I opened the app and froze at what I saw. The photo showed Richard on a beach, his arm around a woman who couldn't be more than 35. Her blonde hair cascaded over bronzed shoulders, and she wore a diamond tennis bracelet that caught the sun. The caption read, "Paradise with my love. Sorry not sorry, Jessica. He's mine now. Upgraded life. Richmond benefits." The location tag showed Bora Bora. The profile belonged to Diana Blackwell. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped my phone. A direct message notification appeared from Diana again. I opened it to find more photos. Richard and Diana shopping in designer stores, dining at exclusive restaurants, lounging on the deck of a private yacht. The final image was of Diana holding up a bank statement, our bank statement, with a message scrawled across it. "Thanks for funding our new life." The last text simply read, "He says you'll take him back. You always do." Pathetic. I ran to the bathroom and vomited, until there was nothing left but bitter bile. When I finally slumped against the cool tile wall, something shifted inside me. The shock and hurt gave way to a burning rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't just an affair. This was calculated theft and humiliation. My husband hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He'd stolen our future and was flaunting it publicly, allowing his mistress to taunt me with the evidence. I returned to the kitchen and stared at the financial documents spread across the table. With sudden clarity, I realized I'd been approaching this all wrong. This wasn't just a marital problem. It was a crime. Richard hadn't merely withdrawn our savings. He had systematically defrauded me of my financial security in retirement. As the wife of a financial executive, I'd absorbed more than I realized over the years. I knew about community property, about fiduciary responsibility in marriage, about financial fraud. Most importantly, I knew exactly who to call. I picked up my phone, surprising myself with how steady my hand had become. My friend Valerie had gone through a brutal divorce 3 years ago. She'd mentioned the name of her divorce attorney, a woman who specialized in high-conflict cases involving financial misconduct. Before I could second-guess myself, I dialed the number. "Hello. I need to speak with Catherine Wilson. It's urgent." As I waited to be connected, I began taking photos of every document on the table. Richard and Diana had underestimated me severely. They thought I was a passive housewife who would fall apart, beg for reconciliation, and accept whatever crumbs Richard decided to throw my way. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Catherine Wilson's office was sleek and understated, with panoramic views of downtown Chicago. The attorney herself matched her surroundings, polished, professional, with an air of contained intensity that immediately put me at ease. This was a woman who knew how to fight. "Financial infidelity combined with actual infidelity," she said after reviewing my documents and the social media evidence. "Unfortunately, I see this more often than you might think. Spouses, usually husbands, who decide to start a new life but want to fund it with marital assets. Can we get the money back?" I asked. The question that had been haunting me since discovering Diana's taunting messages. Some of it potentially. The social media posts actually help us. They're evidence that he's misappropriating marital funds. The court doesn't look kindly on this kind of behavior. Catherine tapped her pen against her legal pad. "But we need to act quickly before more assets disappear. I recommend we file for divorce immediately. and include an emergency motion to freeze all financial accounts. The word divorce still made my stomach clench, but I nodded. Do it. What else should I be doing? Document everything. Every call, every text, every expense, and we need a forensic accountant to trace exactly where the money went. I have someone excellent I work with regularly. By the time I left Catherine's office, a weight had lifted. I had a plan, professionals in my corner, and the beginnings of control over my situation. 3 days later, Richard called. His voice was casual, almost cheerful. Hey Jess, I think I'm ready to come home. I hope you've had time to think about your accusations. I nearly laughed at his audacity. I've been thinking a lot, Richard, about many things. Good, he said, clearly mistaking my calm tone for submission. I'll be home tomorrow afternoon. We can talk then. I informed Catherine immediately. She advised me to say nothing about the legal proceedings we'd initiated. Let him come home thinking everything is normal. The element of surprise is to our advantage. We'll have the papers ready to serve him. The following day, I called my children. I'd been hesitant to involve them, but Catherine had gently suggested they deserved to know what was happening. As adults, they needed to prepare for the family changes ahead, and their support would be valuable to me. The conversations were painful but necessary. Olivia, my practical firstborn, immediately offered to take time off from medical school to come home. Thomas, always the peacemaker, struggled to reconcile the father he knew with the man who had stolen his mother's financial security. Zoe, my youngest and most emotional, broke down in tears before her shock transformed to anger. He's been posting pictures with that woman for months, she admitted through sobs. I saw them on Instagram, but convinced myself it was someone who just looked like Dad. I didn't want to worry you with something I wasn't sure about. This revelation hit me like a physical blow. The betrayal had been happening in plain sight, visible to my own daughter, while I'd been willfully blind. I'm coming home, Zoe insisted. Thomas, too. We already talked about it. No, honey. Stay at school. Focus on your studies. This is my battle to fight. But my children, now adults with minds of their own, wouldn't be dissuaded. By evening, all three had arranged to come home. Olivia arriving first thing in the morning, Thomas and Zoe by early afternoon. They wanted to be present when their father returned, a united front in support of me. Their loyalty moved me to tears, but also filled me with apprehension. Richard was expecting to find a submissive, apologetic wife waiting for his return. Instead, he would face his children's judgment and a woman prepared for war. His reaction was unpredictable, and I worried the confrontation might turn ugly. That night, alone in what had been our bedroom for nearly 3 decades, I barely slept. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. Olivia arrived at 8 a.m., letting herself in with her old key. She took one look at me, still in my robe, dark circles under my eyes, and took charge in her efficient doctor-in-training way. Mom, shower and dress. I'll make coffee and breakfast. Thomas and Zoe texted that their flights are on time. They'll be here by 1. By the time I emerged, feeling marginally more human, Olivia had not only prepared breakfast, but had organized the financial documents I'd scattered across the dining room table. I've been researching financial fraud and divorce cases, she explained, showing me her laptop. Did you know Dad could face criminal charges for this? And the mistress too, if she knew the money was fraudulently obtained. I hadn't considered criminal prosecution. The thought of Richard in legal trouble beyond our divorce gave me no pleasure, despite everything. He was still the father of my children, a man I had loved for most of my adult life. Let's focus on getting through today, I said, sipping the coffee Olivia had made. Catherine called mid-morning to confirm our plan. Her associate would arrive with the divorce papers shortly before Richard was expected. The forensic accountant had already traced significant portions of the missing money to accounts in Diana's name, and to a recently formed LLC registered in Wyoming, a state known for its corporate privacy laws. The LLC is the smoking gun, Catherine explained. It was created 3 months ago with Richard as the sole member. Nearly $200,000 has been transferred there. This wasn't a crime of passion, Jessica. He's been planning this for months. The revelation sent a chill through me. While I'd been planning our anniversary trip, scheduling dental appointments, and managing our household, my husband had been systematically preparing to abandon me and steal our retirement. Thomas and Zoe arrived together, having coordinated their flights to meet in Denver. Seeing my 3 children in our family home, united in their support, filled me with a complicated mix of emotions. Gratitude for their loyalty, but profound sadness that we were gathered for such a painful reason. "What's the plan, Mom?" Thomas asked, his expression serious. At 24, he looked so much like Richard at that age that it made my heart ache. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Flight landed. Be home in an hour. Looking forward to putting this behind us." I showed the message to my children and Catherine's associate, Elise, who had arrived with the divorce papers. We quickly formulated a strategy. The children would wait upstairs initially. I wanted to confront Richard myself first without using the kids as a shield. Once the papers were served, they would join us. As the appointed hour approached, another text arrived, but not from Richard. It was Diana, sending more photos of their vacation and a message that made my blood boil. "He's stopping by to pick up more cash in his golf clubs. Don't embarrass yourself by begging. It's pathetic watching an old woman grovel." I handed my phone to Elise, who documented everything for our case file, but the message revealed something important. Richard wasn't coming home to reconcile. He was coming to collect valuables before disappearing again. Just as this realization hit me, the sound of a key in the front door announced Richard's arrival. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and prepared to face the man who had betrayed me in every possible way. He walked in with the confident swagger of a man who believed he held all the power, suitcase in hand from his trip. His smile faltered only slightly when he saw me sitting calmly at the dining room table, Elise beside me with a folder of documents. "Jessica, what's this? Who is this person?" The moment of truth had arrived, and I was finally ready. "This is Elise Rodriguez from Wilson Family Law," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "She's here on my behalf." Richard's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "You called a lawyer? Jesus, Jessica. That's completely unnecessary. I told you we needed to talk." "Yes, we do," I agreed. "About the $487,000 you transferred out of our retirement accounts. About the LLC you created in Wyoming. About your girlfriend Diana, who's been kind enough to document your spending habits on social media." The color drained from Richard's face. "You've been spying on me? Going through my private financial matters?" "They're not your private financial matters, Richard. They're our marital assets. Assets you've been systematically stealing for the past 8 months. Elise slid the divorce petition across the table. "Mr. Weber, consider yourself served. These documents include an emergency motion to freeze all remaining marital assets, which has already been granted by the court." Richard's composure cracked. "You can't do this. You have no right." "She has every right," came Olivia's voice as my 3 children descended the stairs. The court seemed particularly interested in Diana Blackwell's social media posts. "Dad? The ones showing you spending Mom's retirement money." Richard's eyes darted between the 4 of us. A cornered animal calculating escape routes. "This is ridiculous. A misunderstanding. The money is for investment opportunities, completely legitimate." "I was going to surprise Jessica with 'Please don't lie to us anymore,'" Thomas interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "We've seen the photos, the messages. We know what you've been doing, and who you've been doing it with," Zoe added bitterly. Richard's shock at seeing his children quickly morphed to fury. He turned on me, jabbing a finger in my direction. "You turned my own kids against me? This is low, Jessica. Even for you. Did you tell them how controlling you've been? How you've suffocated me for years?" "We can see who you really are now, Dad," Olivia said quietly. Mom didn't have to say anything. Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I knew instinctively it was Diana. Probably wondering why he hadn't yet returned with whatever valuables they'd planned to take. "I understand everything now," I said, rising from my chair. "You're not here to reconcile. You're here to gather more assets before disappearing with Diana. Your text said you were looking forward to putting this behind us, but you meant escaping consequences, not repairing our marriage." For a moment, Richard looked genuinely confused. "My text? I didn't." He stopped abruptly, something clicking into place. "Diana sent that from my phone." This minor admission, the first honest thing he'd said since arriving, hung in the air between us. "You need to leave," I said, keeping my voice level. "Your credit cards have been frozen. The court has ordered that you not remove any personal items of significant value from the house. You can take clothing and toiletries. Everything else stays until we have a full accounting. This is my house too." "You can't just actually, she can," Elise interjected. "The emergency order grants Mrs. Weber exclusive use of the marital residence pending further court proceedings." Richard looked from face to face, searching for an ally, and finding none. His shoulders slumped momentarily before he straightened, his expression hardening. "Fine. You want a fight? You'll get one. I have access to the best attorneys in Chicago. When this is over, you'll be lucky if I leave you the furniture." As he stormed upstairs to collect his belongings, Zoe began to cry softly. Thomas put his arm around her shoulders, and Olivia moved to my side, gripping my hand. "He's bluffing," Elise whispered. "His assets are frozen. He can't afford the best attorneys in Chicago right now." I nodded, but Richard's threat had struck a nerve. He was desperate and angry, a dangerous combination. In my years as a paralegal and through friends' divorce experiences, I'd seen how ugly these situations could become. Richard had already shown he was willing to steal from me. What else might he do to avoid consequences? This was only the beginning of the battle, and I needed to prepare for whatever came next. 3 weeks later, I sat in Catherine Wilson's conference room, surrounded by a team she had assembled. John Patterson, the forensic accountant who had traced Richard's financial maneuvers, Elise Rodriguez, who had become my day-to-day contact at the firm, and Michael Grayson, a specialist in recovering hidden assets. "We've located approximately $320,000 of the missing funds," John explained, pointing to his detailed financial report. The Wyoming LLC was the key. Most of the money flowed through there to accounts in Diana Blackwell's name. "The good news is that these transfers create a clear paper trail of financial misconduct." Catherine nodded. "The judge has ordered the accounts frozen. Both Richard and Miss Blackwell are prohibited from accessing or transferring these funds pending the outcome of the divorce proceedings." "What about the rest of the money?" I asked. "The other $160,000? We've traced about $65,000 to vacation expenses, luxury purchases, and cash withdrawals," John replied. "The remaining $95,000 is still unaccounted for, but we have some promising leads," Michael interjected. "Richard set up a consultation with my firm 6 months ago, inquiring about asset protection strategies. He didn't retain us, but the timing is telling. He was already planning this even then." The conference room door opened, and Catherine's assistant entered. "Mr. Weber and his attorney have arrived for the settlement conference." Catherine gave me a reassuring nod. "Are you ready, Jessica?" I smoothed down my skirt and took a deep breath. "More than ready." We moved to the larger conference room, where Richard sat with his lawyer, not the high-powered attorney he had threatened, but a mid-level associate from a decent firm. Richard looked haggard, the confident facade crumbling after weeks of legal and financial pressure. The settlement terms we presented were non-negotiable: full financial transparency, return of all misappropriated funds, and a divorce agreement that acknowledged his misconduct. Richard's attorney began to object, but Catherine calmly slid a folder across the table. "Before you respond, you should review these documents. They were delivered to our office this morning." Inside the folder were bank statements, credit card receipts, and hotel reservations, a comprehensive record of Richard's affair and financial misconduct dating back over a year. Most devastating were printed copies of text messages between Richard and Diana, explicitly discussing their plan to drain the retirement accounts and disappear. "Diana provided these willingly," Catherine explained. "When she discovered the accounts were frozen and she might face criminal charges for knowingly accepting fraudulently obtained funds, she decided cooperation was in her best interest." Richard's face contorted with fury and betrayal. "That manipulative bitch?" "I'd advise against such characterizations, Mr. Weber," Catherine interrupted coolly. "Particularly given the content of your messages regarding your wife." Richard's lawyer, after reviewing the documents, requested a moment to confer with his client. Their whispered conversation grew heated, with Richard gesturing angrily while his attorney repeatedly shook his head. Finally, they turned back to us. "We'll need time to review these materials thoroughly," the lawyer began. "The court date is in 3 days. Catherine reminded them. These terms represent your best option, Mr. Weber. Judge Reynolds has a well-documented intolerance for financial misconduct in divorce cases. Richard's shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine. I'll sign. As the lawyers finalized the details, I studied the man I had spent nearly 3 decades with. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall. Only a profound sadness for what we had lost, and a quiet relief that I had found the strength to stand up for myself. Outside Catherine's office, my children waited to drive me home. Our family had been forever changed, but not broken. In the midst of betrayal, I had discovered my own resilience, and the unwavering support of the 3 people who mattered most. Is it over? Olivia asked as I approached. This chapter is, I replied, linking arms with my daughter. But I'm ready to start the next one. Richard had expected me to beg for forgiveness when he returned. Instead, he learned that sometimes the person you underestimate the most becomes the one you should have feared all along. 1 year later, I stood in the doorway of my new lakefront condo, watching the movers arrange the last pieces of furniture. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of Lake Michigan, a daily reminder of my fresh start. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. With Catherine's expert guidance, we'd recovered nearly all the missing funds, and the settlement had been more than fair. Richard's financial misconduct had worked against him in court, resulting in an asset division that favored me significantly. Diana had disappeared from Richard's life as quickly as she'd entered it once the money was no longer flowing. Last I heard, Richard had taken a position with a smaller firm in Seattle, starting over at 54 with a significantly reduced lifestyle and shattered reputation. My phone chimed with a notification. It was a group text from my children with a countdown. T-3 days until Mom's graduation. After decades away from the workforce, I had returned to school to finish my law degree. Catherine had offered me a position at her firm as a paralegal while I studied, mentoring me through the process. In 3 days at age 53, I would finally walk across the stage and complete the journey I had started in my 20s. Olivia was flying in from her medical residency in Oregon. Thomas had taken time off from his engineering job in Colorado. Zoe, now in graduate school in Michigan, had been driving in weekly to help me study for the bar exam. I ran my hand along the smooth marble countertop of my kitchen island. My kitchen in my home, purchased with my settlement, and the signing bonus from the law firm that had already offered me a position in their family practice division. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead become the catalyst for rebuilding a life that was authentically mine. I had lost a husband but reclaimed myself, my dreams, my financial security, my future. And that, I realized as I gazed out at the endless blue horizon of the lake, was the most valuable asset of all.